Featured here at the Stowe Center for Literary Activism, the first museum to successfully organize a union in the state of Connecticut. Tonight, we're honored to have Chris Smalls join us to discuss his debut book, When the Revolution Comes, A Fight for the Future of the Working Class. This book offers a first-hand account of one of the most closely watched labor campaigns in recent history, exploring the challenges, strategies, and experiences that shaped the effort. Chris Smalls is the co-founder and former president of the Amazon Labor Union. Under his leadership, the ALU successfully unionized an Amazon warehouse, a historic victory for workers' rights in America. He is also a Fortune 40 under 40 honoree. He was named to the Time 100 list of the most influential people of 2022, alongside his fellow union organizer, Derek Palmer. Now, let me also introduce you as well to Anita Durkin, is the unit chair of the Stowe Center for Literary Activism. As part of the UAW Local 2110. The Stowe Center became she holds a PhD in American Literature from the University of Rochester. So, and also just a little bit about tonight, what we're gonna be doing. So tonight is gonna go like this. Chris and Anita will talk for until around 7:10, and then there will be like space for like a Q&A. Just any questions that you have on your mind. And so, I'd like to welcome Chris and Anita.
Everybody, thank you for that nice welcome. Anyone's wondering how I got such a cool gig? I am the bargaining unit chair here at the Stowe Center for our union, part of Local 2110 of the UAW. You probably have a sense that working at a museum is not exactly the same as working at an Amazon warehouse. Those are different jobs. But I hope that in our conversation tonight, we'll get a sense that labor injustices happen at workplaces across the board. I hope that you hear things that maybe sound familiar and that you maybe think about the ways in which unions are a critical way for workers to find a voice, to assert their power in the workplace, whether they organize formally or just get organized and active together. So really looking forward to talking to you tonight, Chris, and to learning from you as we have our conversation. So I just want to say right from the beginning, I really enjoyed reading When the Revolution Comes. Thought it was a great book. I appreciate it. I recommend everybody grab it tonight if you don't have it already. And if anyone was unaware, it is a memoir, right? A true memoir that starts with your childhood and growing up in New Jersey. And I wanted to start off just kind of talking about the ways in which you describe your childhood and growing, and particularly growing up Black and working class, and the ways in which the circumstances of your life really seem to prime you for becoming an organizer later.
Thank you. First and foremost, thank you all for being here tonight. It's really an honor to be back in a place where I once lived. If you read the book already, you'll find out that I actually spent a year here in Hartford. So not quite Hartford, I lived in Ellington, but I always came to Hartford. My best friend.
That's not Hartford.
You know what? My best friend lives around, so like I would spend more time there than in Ellington. Trust me. But it's great to see everybody here today, and thank you, and you for that introduction as well. Yeah, going back into my childhood, first and foremost, about just me. A lot of people have gotten to know me over the years, seeing articles, interviews, social media, short clips, you name it. And a lot of people will take that surface level and then pretty much prejudge or come up with their own analysis. And also, articles also give me titles. I went from being a fired Amazon worker to an Amazon labor union president to Literary Activist, whatever the hell that is. And writing this memoir gave me an opportunity to not only let the world know who I am, but to take control over my own narrative and tell my own story. And also let the world into my life on a personal level, starting from my childhood. And yeah, once you get into it, I feel that my journey from my childhood up to present day, some things may relate to you. I'll just name a few. I don't want to spoil too much, but there was a time in my childhood that stands out to most readers from the feedback that I heard. The part where I took on the school bully, and that was the first time that I was recognized by my peers. And everybody takes that as okay. We can see that, and Chris, he stood up for people since he was a kid, and that does reflect to who I am today. But also on the flip side, that was the first time I was in handcuffs as a 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid, and just thinking from that time all the way up to my current age, 37, I lost count how many times I've been in handcuffs. And that just says a lot, just to give you a sense of where, of hitting gems that's actually not in the book, not quite. But when you do read this part, now that you're hearing from me, you'll start to look at it from a different angle.
I appreciate that. And, it's hard not to feel at a lot of times reading the book, right? Times when systems were really, all around, and limiting what seemed possible at different times, right? And I think just sort of go to step back for a second, you give account of a number of different jobs that you had, right? And just like what it meant to be trying to make a living, from early on in your life, trying to help out your mom, but also trying to earn enough as a young man, with so much in your way. And I guess, I think about systems as, these things that are so enormous, right? Education systems, government systems, legal systems, that make it so difficult to make any kind of headway. And one of the lines that stuck out for me, that I thought kind of really underscored that part of your narrative, was really early on. You write, it was like being Black and working class was something that we had done wrong. So without even knowing it, we internalized those feelings. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about like moments where, as you came into your career as an organist, right, where systems really arose as obstacles, and if possible, you can talk a little bit about how you worked around them as they did.
Yeah, this is a great question because there's two pivotal parts in my life when I actually became an organizer. One unknowingly, and the other one is pretty much what everybody knows, the Amazon campaign. So I'll take you back to the first one because this is also important piece of my journey. If you couldn't tell already that there was a part in my life where I wanted to be a rapper. And I had dreams of being a superstar hip hop artist. And this is before social media is what it is today. I'm not too young, I'm not too old, but there was a time where we didn't have no Instagram, we didn't have no Twitter, we didn't have TikTok, we didn't have any of these things. And I was in high school. I was 18, graduating, going to college, and I wanted to become a rapper, full blown. I quit my job at FedEx. I quit working at full time, and I just focused on. I actually dropped out of school as well, and I just went into the studio every night making music and doing shows in New Jersey. The first show I ever did for my mixtape was a flop. I walked in the room expecting to be a huge crowd, friends, family there, and it broke my heart when I walked in there. The club was empty. It's like 20 people, including, the people, the staff. And I'll never forget the next day, I cried like a baby. Me and, my investor friend who was helping me out with the project. And then the following week, I met somebody else and he gave me an idea. He said, you know, just try again. Like just continue trying again. And this way, let's market it different. Let's go to the mall. Let's meet people where they at. Let's go to the campus. Let's pass out flyers. And I started doing that. Face-to-face conversations, meeting people where they were at. And I was able to bring out, it went from minimum 500 people to sometimes 2,000 people coming out to see an independent rapper with no record deal. And some of these venues I was doing these parties that signed artists couldn't even get into these venues. So for me, it was the first time I was actually an organizer as an independent artist. To organize your own shows, you had to talk to people. And those skill sets that I developed are the same skill sets that helped me when I started the Amazon campaign. Talking to people, being a personable, charismatic person, being somebody that they can listen to, relate to. Even before being fired from Amazon as an assistant manager, the same way. I always treated everybody with respect. Everybody liked being on my team. And all of the things that I incorporated with organizing, the most important thing was incorporating, having fun with it. Organizing is sometimes, we all know, stressful, could be boring as hell, could be tiring, could be whatever, just sometimes it's not really appealing. And that was something that I always tried to hone in on as a detail. When we're organizing, we're not going to do things the traditional style. We're going up against Amazon, whose union busting money is endless, who's using all types of things against us. So we always have to think outside the box. And that's something that I definitely developed at a very young age. I was always quite different from other people, other kids, as you're going to notice throughout the book as well. My music career, believe it or not, it didn't take off, but I was offered a number of record deals. I didn't sign them. Some of them wanted me to change my identity. I was never going to do that. And I'll tell you something I don't believe it's in the book, but it's a true story. But I actually used to hang out with A$AP Rocky before he was A$AP Rocky. A$AP Rocky used to actually come to my house and freestyle with me because he was a mutual friend of my cousins. And then I watched him blow up overnight when his first single came out. And it was just like these things in my life, it helped shape who I am, but also was very much learning lessons as well of how my life would have turned out differently if I just would have made a different decision. But the most important decision that I ever made was getting a job at Amazon. Being married at the time, having gone from a family of 3 to a family of 5 because I had to be the one person in the family to have twins. By the way, this so happened. The decision to work at Amazon, and this is the one last spoiler, but I actually left a unionized job as a Teamster to go to Amazon. So imagine that. And you'll find out the reasons why I've done that. But also to know that once again, certain decisions in my life could have put me on a whole nother path. But one thing I tell everybody now is that if you would have told me that I could look as cool as a rapper and be a union organizer, I've been doing this shit alone.
Chris, I think hearing you talk about your rap career, right? I remember reading those parts in your book and being kind of floored, honestly, that you had offers, right? You had opportunities. And you're like, no, right? I think what it takes to refuse an offer that doesn't actually acknowledge the full value of what you're bringing to the table. And how much that is a skill that you have to have as an organizer again and again. But you also talk about how hard it is to get people together, right? So when you're doing that work of putting together a union, or you already have one, trying to get everybody to buy into this idea of, we don't have what we want now, but maybe we will someday. It takes a formidable amount of leadership skills, right? It takes a lot of charisma, right? It takes a lot to bring people together in that way, which, obviously you have done in a number of different contexts. And one of the things that you mentioned in the book was how important it is to see union leaders who actually look like the workers that they're representing, right? You take note of one in particular, college-educated, white union organizer who's working at a place that he's never actually done the labor of, right? Trying to get people to buy into this idea of a union. You probably get a sense of why that's not the best way to get a union together. But I wondered if you could talk a little bit more, sort of talk a little bit about this, the importance of representation, and maybe a little bit too, how your style has become part of that.
Yeah, great question. A few things. I'm glad you brought up the fact that I did turn away some of the opportunities, because it just, once again, reflecting that, it just reminds me of who I always thought I was in my head. I always thought I was bigger than, life, especially at a young age. Couldn't tell me anything. I was pretty stubborn. And yeah, I know whatever record deals that I could have potentially had, I was like, no, I want $1 million and nothing less. And that was just my ego, but it's also once again, knowing my worth, as you mentioned, just knowing some of the language, some of the things they wanted me to do, changing my identity, changing my name, because it sounds like Biggie Smalls. And I get it. But I'm like, that's my real name. She actually didn't have that name. But when it comes to representation, see, I'll say my opinion, and I'm also going to give a couple of facts. So last year, I believe last year, or maybe it was the year before, SEIU International, they elected their first Black woman president in over 100 years. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. In over 100 years. And it's like, it was like a little celebratory moment, of course. I'm glad they finally elected their first Black. But we're talking about one of the largest healthcare unions in the country, who majority of their workers are Black and brown, especially 1199, which we all know. So for them to elect their first Black woman president in over 100 years, I kind of took that with And then I thought about what I've been through as a union president in my short little 3 years, and being flown all over the country to meet with all of these different unions, to be keynote speakers, to be new panelists, to be a fire chatter, to be a motivator, inspirer, whatever it was. I was open, the doors were opened up to me, and I met a lot of these presidents, but international, not just locals, but international presidents. And majority of them were white men or white women. And I ask people this, and I'm gonna ask you the same question. How many of y'all, besides the one I mentioned from SEIU, how many of y'all know any other Black or brown international union presidents besides me? And that's when I was like, I saw my union executive board, Amazon workers, Black and brown, mostly Black women, compared to anybody else's executive board. And it didn't look the same. And the most important one is the one that I affiliated with, which is the Teamsters. And I'll never forget what I told my union the day before we met with them. I said, we're going to walk in a room tomorrow. It's going to be 25 suit and ties and white men. And I was absolutely right. But they threw a curveball. They flew one black organizer to have in the room. And she was just invited last minute, just to say that they got representation. And I asked somebody, where you come from? Oh, well, they told me to come down. And I wonder why. And this is not just here in the US, this is all over the world. Since I've been the president and stepped down from my post in the last 2 years, working in the Palestinian resistance movement, I've been to 45 countries around the world. And yeah, it's all over the world. So yeah, when I talk to certain rank and file members, they'll pull me aside. I'll go to conventions and people pull me into different rooms, different conversations about different things that they are noticing in their unions. And I heard it all, seen it all, heard it all. But one thing I do know that the labor movement is not only a small world, because we're talking less than 6% in the private sector, less than 9% in the public sector. And that number is declining every day because these jobs that are being created are artificial intelligence and coming for everybody's job. And just seeing how, once again, representation, even within the labor movement, is not there yet. It's just not there. And I say this because when you do read the book, and if you've been noticing some of the work that I've been doing, is to hold labor unions accountable. We all got to do that. We have to hold labor unions. We have to make them stronger. We have to force them to organize, force them to get involved with grassroots campaigns. For example, standing up for Palestine. Because when we say an injury to one is an injury to all, we don't say except for Palestinians. But for these unions, mostly internationals, there's great locals that are already on the right side of history. But when we talk about internationals and international presidents and leadership, there's nothing wrong with us holding them accountable. And that's something that we all got to do right now.
I think about accountability, right? And think about that in terms of systems that sometimes, as a rank and file worker, figuring out how to get from your local, right, to the next level to make that kind of change can be really daunting. And I'm curious when and how you started to feel yourself compelled to get more involved in actions outside of, labor specifically, right? Because you've been a part of a lot of national and international actions, and let me talk more about that.
Yeah, it was definitely the first time I went to Cuba. I actually took 20 Amazon workers as a labor delegation 4 years ago to Cuba for the first time. And we were there for a number of weeks. I actually graduated from Fidel Castro University, got my diploma. Spent the week in the rural part in the most disciplined, militant academy that we can think of. We were working with the unions of Cuba, the CTC, and the government as well. We was fortunate enough to meet with the president. We was fortunate enough to get invited into autonomous areas, meeting women and children, and do all different types of humanitarian things. And it was the most resilient trip that I could have ever offered to my union and to myself. It lit the fire back in us. But also to build that international solidarity, it stuck with me from that moment. And this is 4 years ago. And then we all know what happened 3 years ago, or coming up on 3 years. And I happened to be in Berlin, Germany, the week of October 7th. And for those who don't know, Berlin, Germany has one of the largest Palestinian diasporas outside of Palestine in Europe. 30,000, 40,000 Palestinians living there. And I've seen it for myself firsthand what the police did to that neighborhood the day of. So I saw them tear down flags. I saw them arrest Palestinians, drag children away, zip tie. Every protest was kettled in violently, and I reported it. A couple minutes, and then I shared it on my Instagram and lost 10,000 followers overnight. People was in my DM telling me, like, I supported you when you took on Amazon, but this is where I draw the line. And I said, wow, this is a familiar feeling. Lost 5,000, 10,000 on Twitter. Same thing, people dragging me online, canceling me, whatever. And my response was just simple, 2 words, fuck you. And I continue to advocate because I took an oath as a trade unionist that we are supposed to be the shield for the working class. And our history, unfortunately, is not taught to us. We don't know that, the Palestinian resistance movement and the trade union movement actually go hand in hand since the first Nakba. And I learned all of this because I did a panel discussion with Dr. Mustafa Meraguti in Canada 3 years ago. And he taught me all of the history. He also invited me to go to Jerusalem, but I never got an opportunity to do that because of October 7th. So, for the majority of it, I started doing the protests. I joined the students at Columbia day 1. Thanks to them, I ended up on Canary Mission, which I wear with a badge of honor. And as you know, you may have heard last summer, I was on the Freedom Flotilla to Gaza to break the siege, where I was captured and tortured for 5 days. When I got back to the US, that was the most awakening moment that I ever had in my 6 years of being a public figure. Because one thing about the Palestinian resistance movement is showing everybody exactly who they are. And when I got back, I wasn't met by all of these unions that once praised me. I wasn't met by all these politicians that used to smile in my face. But I was met by the community, and all of my day ones and my entire union was there. Not just the old leadership, but also the current leadership was there. And that meant everything to me because I met some great people over here, and they flew in from different parts of the country just to see me for that 5 minutes. And that meant a lot. But what I was shocked to see when I started servicing online was only 2 unions put out a statement condemning what happened to me. One was my union. The second one was the National Nurses Union. Mm-hmm. That's it. And the rest of the statements came from unions in other parts of the world. A lot of people don't even know that there were statements from other European unions, from Canada, Canadian unions, all over the world. Other unions have put out numerous statements. But America, all of the unions in this country, once will be all over the country, only 2. So I'm saying all this to say that not only do we know that we have a lot of work to do, I'm saying this to say that I can't do it alone. Because right now I'm the only labor leader that's banned from Israel for 100 years. That's fine. That's not what's going on. And I don't think they're going to last 100 years. But I shouldn't be the only one.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And me crashing the Met Gala
Yes.
a few weeks ago was to remind people and to continue spreading that awareness. Because people are asleep,
Mm-hmm.
but they're starting to wake up now. But we all have a role to play, and that's what the reason I wrote this book is so that we can start to organize in whatever space that we're in, and once again, hold the folks that are in power accountable, whether it's unions or politicians, because there's no cavalry coming to save us.
You know, there's a lot in what you just said. I want to say a little bit more about it. Sometimes it feels, and I think part of our work at the Stowe Center is always how do we get started, right? How do we take the next step? How do we go from I want to do it to I'm actually going to go out and do it? And how do we get to a point of leaning on when we have a collective already, we have even pushing those of power to do more with it, or to not be beholden to whatever interests they're serving at any given time. I'd love to hear more about that. And that does, I think, lead me to think a little bit about history, you know, which played a big role in your book, maybe more than I was expecting, how much it was animating what you were doing as an activist and how you were understanding your activism. Heard a little bit about that in terms of getting involved, you know, in the movement for Palestine. I'd love to hear more about what you take from history and how it affects the choices that you make as an activist and organizer.
The great thing about my journey is I met some people that are no longer with us, who were pillars in our history books. One, rest in peace, Jane McAlevey. She was a pillar in the labor movement. She was a warrior to the death of her. And me and her spent some really dope, intimate moments before she passed away last year. And one thing she told me when I asked her one specific, I said, what's her favorite book that she wrote? And she told me, so I encourage y'all to read her first book, Fight Like Hell. Because she told me that's the best work that she did. And I asked her that because I wanted to know. And also she told me this quote, there's leaders and there's activists. And the leader's job is to activate the activists. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, I understand. And yeah, you know, ironically, she wanted me to affiliate with the Teamsters, which I refused at first, and I was like, no way. But then I ultimately granted her wish, you know, due to the financial situation, taking on a $1 trillion company is not sustainable for an independent union. But there's other reasons why I affiliated. Because I'm now able to offer the workers strike funds to go on strike, which is the only way they're probably going to get income come to the table. The second historical moment and how history repeats itself, but also how history is still being written. Still, till this day, rest in peace, Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Yeah.
Who called my phone 6 years ago when I got fired from Amazon. And I still don't know how he got my number. But when he called me, I thought it was a prank. Like, Jesse Jackson. And, you know, it wasn't. You know, he was battling Parkinson's, as we all know. But he still had moments where he was very articulate. and I was able to understand him. And he told me, out of his own words, his mouth, that I reminded him of a young Martin Luther King. And then the second thing he says, I'm gonna get you a lawyer. And he did it. The next 30 seconds, he had a lawyer on the phone and she took my case on. And she represented him for 30 years. Her name is C.K. Hopwood. And yeah, you know, just the fact that Jesse Jackson called me and picked me up at my darkest time when Amazon just fired me publicly. And I felt like I really didn't have no hope. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had to embrace the moment. And over the years, I was able to spend more time with him. And just to hear him give a speech to a crowd, to witness these type of historical moments, you know, things that other people, and have conversations that other people are not privy to, I really take that to consideration, that the history of our ancestors is very much still here. And the work that I'm doing is to carry that legacy for them. Because a few weeks ago, I was honored and blessed to have my Eat the Rich jacket, the one that everybody loved, the one that's on this cover. It's no longer in my possession anymore. But it's now in the National Civil Rights Museum in the Martin Luther King exhibit called The Legacy that just opened up. So I encourage everybody to take a trip over there to the Civil Rights Museum, where you can now see that Eat the Rich jacket and some other things that I gave them as well. And I say all of this because the day of the grand opening, they invited all of the families whose kids been murdered by police. Everybody you can think of. Sandra Blunt, Fidel Castro. Yes. And everybody. I can go on and on. It was overwhelming, and the amount of grief that was in the room, but also the amount of power that was in the room. Because my mom was with me, and she got to meet some of these women, some of these parents. And over the years, I ran into some of these families myself, but to have my mom there was a very special moment. But one thing that stuck out to me that the director of the museum said was that we want to recognize people while we're still alive.
Mm.
And that stuck out to me as well, because I know history says that most Black leaders died before the age of 40. And that's something that I have to very much think about, knowing that I have children, knowing that the work that I do, I put my life and my body and my freedom on the line, and knowing that I'm just getting started, that this is just the beginning. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is this. Martin Luther King was arrested 29 times, so I got about 10 more times.
I love that you do that question about history and talking about people who you've known in your life, right? So not folks who are in the distant past, but folks who are in the present, and reminding us all that history is where we are right now, that we are all part of history as well. And you know, you don't have to answer if it's too much, but as you were talking about, you know, your experiences on the Stowe Center, right? And other moments in your book where you were experiencing, you know, some hardships that I think many people will not experience in their lifetime. Many people will experience in their lifetime, right? Depending on who they are, where they're coming from. How do you, when you're in those moments, because I'm hearing on one hand, right, these low lows, you know, about torture, right? And at the same time, these high highs where, you know, your jackets a museum, where it belongs. And how in those really difficult moments, what is it that's pulling you through, if you don't mind sharing that?
So definitely, one advice that I was given years ago was that the people around me are going to change over and over and over again. But as long as you have a strong core, nothing can phase you. And what he meant by that was, as long as I have a solid one or two people, 3 or 4 people, if I'm lucky, whoever it is, as long as they're with me, as long as my core team, my core community is with me, as long as these folks are still supporting me, that outside of that circle, the people around us are going to change. They're going to come in and out, in and out. And they were right. They were absolutely right. And it's so true. You know, no matter what I do, whether it's individually, whether it's collectively, my core team is going to ride with me. And sometimes that core team includes my mother, who's, you know, she's always supportive of me, sometimes not. Obviously, when I left to go on the flotilla, I didn't tell my core team. I didn't tell my mother. The only people I told was my children. Because at the time, I felt those are the only people that needed to know was my kids. And everything that I was doing was for them and that I loved them. And yeah, you know, when I got kidnapped, tortured, beaten, choked, thrown up against the wall, stripped naked, left in there for 5 days on a hunger strike. As I laid in my cell, I wasn't in my body. I was in an out of body experience. It was sort of like I was living in my head. And I didn't know what was going on because remember, I had no outside communication. They wouldn't even allow me to see my lawyer, nothing. So, besides the one moment where I felt empowered because shout out to Yemen, Yemen started bombing Israel while I was in prison. But I was like, chill, hold on, let me get out of here. Right? Yes. But the things that I was feeling was more of a spiritual connection to the broader world, the community. I felt that something was happening on the outside. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was going to come home to. Even if I was going to come home, I just felt that there was something happening with the community outside. And yeah, sometimes it's unexplainable. The things that happen to me, why things happen, I can't really explain besides knowing that, yeah, I believe in the movement, I believe in the work. And yeah, when it comes to how I always overcome things, it's really about my childhood. Watching my mom, single Black mother, raise 2 boys, get up, go to work every day, go to college, and deal with me, who happens to be the oldest one. And I know I was a handful because my kids are nothing like me. So just imagining my mom raising me, because some of these things in the book, she don't even know about. What you write about? I'm like, you gotta read it. One thing I didn't put in the book was I used to take her car, but I still tell her. Like, Mom, I took your car at like 13. I know you did. Right. But In this book, you're going to see me once again go through trials and tribulations that maybe you relate to, whether it's facing addiction, living out of your car, being in prison, visiting prison, growing up without a dad, being married and divorced, losing a job, getting fired. All of the things that I write about in this book, you may relate to that. And that was the purpose of not only the book, but also the title of the book. When the revolution comes, the revolution is here, but the revolution starts with yourself.
Yeah, I think that was, as I read the book, right, feeling so much exactly what you just said, that there are so many moments that are, this sounds like someone I knew, right? This is something that I experienced. And how powerful that is, because, you know, I think we all know in this room how much you've done for this moment, for people living now, for the world, for the future, right? You know, you are building the future that we need. What freedom of justice in this country and abroad. And I'd like to know, I guess, what's coming next for you, you know, as you're thinking about your next steps. What are you thinking about?
Yes, I gotta write a rap album now. I don't have the time, but I would love to. But honestly, what's next for me, I still want to continue supporting the Palestinian cause, you know, in any way possible. So what I'm doing, what I have been doing for the last 9 months now, I've been raising money for the dock workers in Italy who shut down all their ports to stop all the weapons going to Israel. So I'm proud to say that I've raised over 170,000 so far, and I'm trying to raise more than that. So if you feel generous, disarmgenocide.org or chef.org/disarmgenocide. Yeah, we're trying to raise money to stop workers. Stop the dock workers from going to work, to stopping weapons from going to Israel. We did it successfully a few months ago. We stopped 21 ports in the Mediterranean Sea. We have 5 different countries involved: Turkey, Greece, Italy, Spain, Morocco. But I'm proud to say we just had an international meeting a few weeks ago, and we called for international general strike, where 40 countries have already signed on to shut down the week of October 7th for this year coming up. So I'm going to be strongly involved with that, raising money so that I can pay the dock workers to go on strike. If they don't go on strike, the weapons make it to Israel. Right now, the U.S. is the #1 culprit, sending weapons every 15 hours. These weapons touch the hands of unionized workers from the ILWU and the ILU, maritime unions, some of our favorites, yes. And I've been trying to hold them accountable. I stormed the AFL-CIO, gave them a petition. They accepted it. They didn't really respond, but I expected that as well. And my message for them is, and this is not coming from me, this is actually coming from my union brothers and sisters in Italy. They told me that the U.S. unions can continue sending weapons. They're going to stop over there. So, you know, that's what I'm going to be working on next, is continuing to raise money, continuing to support the flotillas, whether it's in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, continuing to support Cuba as well. I've been, just came back from a humanitarian mission. Going to be going back down there possibly this summer as well. And yeah, I have to finish up this book tour here in the US. I also got to do some things in the UK. And yeah, I mean, try to stay free. I mean, I'm facing some charges from the Met Gala, so I got to chill in New York City area. But knowing me, I don't have no chill, so I don't know. I just got to continue doing what I can to free all oppressed people from around the world. And, you know, hopefully this book inspires people. People use it as a tool. It's not just a memoir, but hopefully, yeah, in the words of Tupac, he said that he may not be able to change the world, but he'll be able to spark the mind of someone who will. So I'm trying to do the same thing, you know, and I believe in the power of people. We've proven it against Amazon, the $2.2 trillion company, that no amount of money in the world can amount to the power of people when we come together.
Mhm.
Answer all my questions, honestly, so I want to turn it over to the folks in the crowd. I'm just going to hand it to you, Carl, if that's okay.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to get us started.
Thank you. Many times, in many ways, James Baldwin would always observe that we have a responsibility to be a witness for what's right and true and just, even if we don't have the power to make the immediate situation right and true and just. It seems to me that one of the many things holding back too many of us, and particularly people in the white community, is the need to see that we're going to win in the short term, which destroys the power, I believe, in committing ourselves to what's right, even if we'll never see it through to the end. It seems to me that Dr. King spoke about the power of hope being something that has to transcend our own individual lifetime. We have to work for things that are bigger than ourselves and will take longer than our lives. And I wonder if you would comment about those people and that thought.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I've said it already, you know, once again, Black leaders, they don't get to see the fruits of their work. They don't really get that opportunity to live, to see the fruits of their labor and see how their legacy transpires even after they're martyred. For me, I don't want to be that. I don't want to just be somebody that you read about after I'm 6 feet under.
Mm-hmm.
So I just keep that in the forefront that I gotta be smart. I gotta be strategic about how I move. I gotta be aware of and conscious of what type of government that we're dealing with. As you know, ICE is on my ass. They detaining other people questioning about me. So, you know, once it starts to get to a certain level and I start to, you know, get all these badges of honor, you know, I don't know how many canary missions or doc sites that I'm on, but I know I'm on quite a few. You know, I know that they're trying to charge people that's going to Cuba with terrorists. So I'm on that list. All these things is real. So I don't take it lightly when I know that our ancestors have died for this work.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always, as a Black man in America, I'll be a fool not to consider that they won't try. And I know people don't want to hear that. But if I don't think about it, that's a lack of my own safety, because I know where we at. I know we're in the US of A, and right now we're in some dark times in this country. So once again, I'm just blessed to have a community and people around me that's always going to be there for me. So as long as I have the community and my people, and also everybody here in this room, we all got to come together for one common cause right now. So my fight is your fight.
Thank you.
I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much. I just want to say that it has been deeply meaningful, energizing, exciting to see somebody who looks like the kids I grew up with, the place that I grew up in, leading this work and leading this fight. So I'll try to be coherent in my statement, but you talked about the responsibility of unions and then being held accountable and supporting grassroots leadership. And I think that's one of my bigger contentions and difficulties with the labor movement. I have a role in Connecticut. That part of it is to work to align strategy and political alignment between grassroots and other movements, right? The field. And I'm wondering, this is a theme that I see come up where there's an argument to be made that some grassroots work has not been as effective as it's needed to be. And unions have a strong model, right? And are moving large bases of people. And I just want to hear you speak a little bit more to like the responsibility and imperative of labor and labor union to invest in Black grassroots leadership and the ways that they are required and responsible to do that because of all the very real reasons that you named why we don't have strong Black organizations, why our Black leaders do not live like, and I feel like sometimes a little gaslit and like, well, this work isn't very effective. And it's like, bro, we don't get a chance to build really effective work. So I would just love if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you said the key word, investment, not transactional, and not just saying solidarity, because we all can say solidarity, but what is solidarity? Give you an example of what we can do in this country and what's happening in other parts of the world. And I'm going back to Italy because Italy's been a great model for resistance and present time, just because they understand the assignment. But in September of this year, Italy called a general strike and brought out 3 million people and shut down their entire country and brought their entire country to an economic halt. Did any of y'all hear about that? Right. I was there. It was great. And it was called by the unions, right? But they don't have 3 million people that's going to be doing this, going on strike. You know who it was who led these strikes? It was high school kids who occupied every high school in Italy. High school, not university, high school. And also the university were occupied as well. And all of the mom and pop stores understood the assignment once the largest trade union federation in Italy called the general strike. It was no, we need mutual aid. Oh, we need this first. We need this infrastructure. We need this. Everybody understood that what can happen in Palestine and what's happening in Palestine can happen to them. That's it. That's why they did it. And they're going to do it again. That's the same strike I'm talking about on October 7th. Italy will be on a general strike as well. Now, let's talk about the US. A number of things. Let's start with the largest federation in America. Y'all know what that is, right? The AFL-CIO, right? They represent 12.5 million workers in the US. They represent 60 different unions, right? That's the AFL-CIO. And every election cycle for the last 60 years, what has the AFL-CIO done? And all of the 60 unions. Vote blue no matter what. Vote blue no matter who. So when Joe Biden dropped out and they endorsed Kamala Harris, who done nothing for labor, and they stood behind her during the CNC with them signs. Meanwhile, she being interviewed by a billionaire, Oprah, and we saying this is working class. And then they paid Beyonce $10 million. They paid Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, all these rappers with our taxpaying dollars, by the way. Meanwhile, they said they was working on genocide, ceasefire, which we found out was never happening. They didn't do that. AOC lied to us, right? And then they lost terribly. But all of these unions endorse these Democrats and get nothing in return for decades. Now let's go back into why I bring all that up. Because when it comes to Palestine, it's amazing how all of these unions can now talk about ICE, right? They all ICE, fuck ICE. But they won't make that ICE relationship to the IOF in Palestine. Because these are the same unions that said nothing for 2.5 years about Palestine, but now they all pro-ICE. Yeah, we in the streets for ICE. Make it make sense.
Or the FBI to provide folks.
Well, I'm gonna take it a little. I'm gonna give it a real clear-cut understanding of what unions could have did when these students occupied all of these universities in our country. And I'm gonna tell you, it's spread all over the world. Every country I visited, it has encampments. Some of them still doing it right now as we speak. When I went to Ireland, they did an encampment. They school divested in one day. They won. One day, shut it down. You know why? Because the largest union in Ireland, SIT2, stood right with them students. Got it done in one day. Here in the US, just imagine if labor unions stood side by side with these students as they started encampments for Palestine. How powerful that would have been. If they would have actually stood with them and invested, not just show up to rallies, protests, ceasefire resolution, that's a piece of paper, but actually use some of their resources. They love talking about it. The Teamsters love bragging about it. We got $350 million in strike funds. Great. Let me get some of that. UAW too. They got millions of dollars strike funds, which is great for their members. They go on strike. They did it three campaigns they did, historical, 2 years ago. Excellent. Good for their members. But what about the grassroots in your own communities? These are opportunities that labor unions are missing. There's a disconnect. So labor unions have to understand we can't continue to endorse politicians that don't give us anything in return. And also, we have to figure out a way to connect to the working class on all working class issues, and we can't continue to cherry pick. Can't say we're against ICE, but we're not going to. Palestine is not a working class issue, which was a statement that was put out by the AFL-CIO, which is absolutely insane. And that's why I continue to call this out numerous times online. People attacking me for that, whatever. I don't really care because I understand that in other parts of the world, the reason why they're able to go on general strikes, the reason why they're able to get out mass millions of people is because they have a multi-party system. They don't have a two-party system. They have Communist Party, Socialist Party, Labor Party, Green Labor Party, Democratic, Socialist Party. Other countries have multi-party governments and they have more militancy in their unions. Their unions don't play around. When it's time to shut it down, they understand the assignment. We have to do that here. We have to get our unions to get outside of the vote blue no matter who. Start there. I know it's an uphill battle, but we have to. And I can tell you how, in our union, my constitution, we don't endorse no politics. We just don't. I mean, it's either you earn the endorsement or you don't. Secondly, escape the two-party system in the US. That's something that we as working class people have to do. Understand that both parties are the same, both parties are supporting endless wars and genocide. And also understand that no politician is going to be our savior.
Yeah, thank you.
A question from the chat. Abigail says, as a current MSW student focusing on policy practice, getting into this field of work seems overwhelming. What would you say are the necessary first steps to take as someone with little social influence in order to attempt to foster the change we wish to see in the world?
Great question. Well, I'll say this once again. Everybody has a role to play and contribute to the movement which you can. You know, it comes with sacrifice. You don't do this work without losing something. And because we live in the 21st century where we have all these tools, social media, you know, we have independent media as well, whether it's podcasts, or, you know, independent journalists, whatever, all these different things. Everybody in this room know themselves better. They know their skill sets. Whatever you can use it. Whether it's your voice, whether you're tech savvy, whether you're a musician, an artist, incorporate that into your organizing efforts. Don't do the traditional style. We're going to put up a PowerPoint. We're going to hand out some leaflets. We're going to sign this petition. We all have to think outside of that box. And that just means sacrificing just a little bit more. And sacrificing something that you may love, you know, for the greater good. You don't have to talk to people face to face all the time, but if you can cook a good meal, if you can break bread with people, you know what they say, right? The best way to somebody's heart is through their stomach. Well, I can tell you, we incorporated a lot of food when we were organizing this Amazon. I never barbecued a day in my life before our campaign. And I go out there every summer and I do at least 25 barbecues every summer. So I just became a master chef over it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just watched my uncle do it and I said, all right. So it took a couple failure attempts, but somebody has to do it. And the last thing I would say, if you don't get up and do the work, who's going to do it?
So kind of piggybacking off of that, I hate that word. Piggybacking off of that, right? I think a lot of times there's so much going on and there's always something else to do with media and everyone wants to jump in and do something. I've been organizing here in Hartford and with Palestinian organization and Congolese organization for years. And one of the things that I think the wall that we kind of bump into is turning despair into disciplined collective action versus just the temporary outrage. Like you get them for a moment and then they're ready to go. They're gonna go for a moment. I'm gonna use you for the moment because like I need the bodies where I can get them. But how do you turn that? What would you say to somebody that wants to know how to turn that despair into like disciplined collective action?
Yeah, I mean, this is a problem in all, you know, attrition is a real thing in all these different movements. Like we saw with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, how the whole country was outside and then everybody went back to work.
Yeah.
That's what happened. The pandemic was over. Now we back to 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And that was by design. So it's the same thing in every movement. You know, Trump gonna do some crazy shit, gonna have us out in the streets by the droves, and then after a few days, few weeks, people get burnt out, they going back to work, they gotta, you know, take care of the kids, so you start to lose people. And it's hard. It's really hard. But this also goes back to my original thing. I'm thinking outside the box. Don't just always respond when we're going to just take it to the streets. Because I think that's a number one mistake sometimes, is that we get so agitated that we just go right to protest. Let's go shut it down. Let's go march down the street. Let's go march 2 miles, 2 hours, 3 hours. It's a lot of work. And I've done hundreds of them. I know I got more coming. Not saying that we don't do it, but there's a smarter way that we can do it. And there's also different things that we can do to keep people there longer. And I think that's what we have to start to do. We have to first get to know people on an individual level, personally. So now you know, my kids, her kids play at the same park on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. They on the same basketball team on Saturday. Oh, they go to the bowling alley on Sunday. Oh, they eat at this restaurant. My family eat there. Now you're getting to know people on a personal level, which I always tell my organizers, just because we radicalize don't mean that this person is ready. You're gonna go over there, you're gonna get cursed out, especially in New York. Trust me. So befriend them first. And once you get to know people, it'll help you understand how to organize. Especially, take it from me, organizing Amazon workers who work 12-hour shifts and then clocking into Uber Eats or Uber Drive right after to work another 10 hours. If you think I was gonna get them to come to any protest, I ain't never invited them. No. But I have, a good coach told me to know my personality, right? I know that these workers ain't going to go to these protests, but I know this organization is going to show up for me and they're going to represent. So it's just about figuring out who these people are, where they come from, and being creative about how you're doing it. Make it fun, make it appealing, get them outside of the normal elements. Surveillance, meaning like don't talk to nobody at work. They don't want to hear that. They scared that they're going to lose their job. So get them out to a public place, get them out for a drink, food, meal, whatever it is, and then talk to them. And I promise you, over time, the conversation will. Oh, you don't like that, boss? How much you getting paid? I'm not making enough. You'll start to naturally start to have those conversations, and it'll work. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. A lifetime struggle that we in. And you can't have one foot in, one foot out. It just doesn't work that way. You gotta be fully committed, both feet in, and once you start, you don't turn it back. There's nobody coming to save us. Billionaires, corporations, we gotta do this work. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna leave here on a Debbie Downer, but I'll just say this. Last story. 2 years ago, Kamala Harris was running for president. And she invited me to the White House for the second time. I went already. Y'all saw that Joe Biden. I don't remember the conversation. It was so whack. I'm pretty sure he don't remember either. But we should
Definitely does not remember.
Kamala Harris, right? He started running. They invited me on Juneteenth. They wanted me on the front lawn. They want that representation from the labor movement. Yes. And the same day, I was invited to walk in the Louis Vuitton fashion show in Paris with Pharrell and Rihanna. So y'all know what I chose, right? Neither. Instead, I went to an Amazon warehouse in Vancouver, Canada, which is now the first unionized building in Canada's history. So yeah, I just wanted to tell y'all that. But it also, once again, if I don't get up and do this work, who's gonna do it? If I don't get on a freedom flotilla to Gaza, who's gonna do it? If I don't go to Cuba, who's gonna do it? If I don't crash the Met Gala,
Yeah.
who's gonna do it? Power to the people, y'all.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for everything you say to heart. Hope everybody does. Thank you.